through a lease agreement or a lease option agreement. One of the ways that NYSERDA Build Ready is able to do this is through our renewable energy credit agreements with the developer. Typically, when a large-scale renewable energy project that is above 5 megawatts is connects to the transmission grid in New York State, they typically get renewable energy credits that is competitively bid for through our NIGATS market. The Build Ready program, however, is a little bit unique in that the project developers actually bid for a higher REC than what is typically offered by the regular market. So in essence, NYSERDA is actually able to leverage a greater amount of funding and revenue for the developers to make a project that would ordinarily not pencil, actually be financially viable and proceed towards development. If there's any questions, feel free to interrupt me. I am not seeing anybody, so I can't see if there's a raised hand or not. This is the type of lands that we typically look at, as I mentioned, parking lots, landfills, brownfields, commercial sites. We do not do any type of agricultural lands whatsoever, except for crossing them whenever we need easement or right-of-way. No cleared lands or forested lands. We really try to stick to the Build Ready mission of these types of lands to pursue a project. The projects are competitively awarded to the developer at the end of the process. We typically would invite someone from the municipality to participate in the scoring table for selecting the end developer. One of the major benefits of the Build Ready program is that we are required to package all of our projects with potential host community benefit packages. These benefit packages could come in all sorts of forms. In some of our projects, we've looked at creating a grant program that certain folks in the community can have access to for economic development. We've looked at improvements to public resources such as parks, boathouses, and other facilities that the public has access to. But really, as part of our community engagement, stakeholder engagement process that we build out, we like to ask the community and ask the different stakeholders, what are some of the ways that you'd like to see the revenue coming in from this project help the community? And what are some of the things that you'd like to see interested in happening here? And one of the main benefits of the Build Ready program is that these renewable energy projects can be a catalyst for some of these other types of interests that the municipality may have. In terms of the types of sites that the Build Ready program looks at, it's not overly different from what the private sector looks at as well. We look at sites that are potentially near the electric infrastructure, typically transmission level. We look for land that is not agricultural, as mentioned, land compatible with solar and battery energy storage. Typically, we are targeting about 5 megawatt projects and above. That is because Build Ready is part of the large-scale renewables program within NYSERDA. 5 megawatts typically requires about 4 to 7 acres of solar per megawatt. So these projects are typically about 25 to 30 acres in size. This is a good time to also highlight the fact that Build Ready does not compete with the private sector at all. We really try to support the private sector and tackle projects that the private sector would ordinarily not want to move forward with. This is a little less pertinent to the Dunkirk Airport project because it's all ground mount, but we are focusing on also progressing Build Ready solar PV canopies. One of the nice benefits of Build Ready and the canopy program is that these canopies have an extremely high cost to them, which is why a lot of private developers are bucking away from developing them. But through our ability to increase the price of the RECs, this is a nice opportunity for Build Ready to look at certain publicly owned lands and parking lots and really take advantage of these areas that could benefit from dual use, where you maintain the full usage of the parking lot and generate additional revenue and support renewable energy growth. So this concludes my presentation on the general Build Ready portion of the presentation. And I could get into the actual site-specific discussion next. But before I do, let me know if there's any questions from the group.
No questions.
Thank you. So as you all know, we are looking at the Chautauqua County Dunkirk Airport today. We reached out quite a few years ago, actually, with the previous airport director initially to see if there would be a potential project here. And since then, we've been continuing to speak with Shannon and the FAA, and we do believe that there's a really good potential opportunity here for a project. Our initial screening and diligence has identified about 25 megawatts of PV generation capacity at this location. This is across both the airport parcel as well as some of the private parcels up to the north of the airport that we think are compatible with the goals of the project and would be good additions in not only increasing the megawatt of the project, but make the project much more financially viable, as I'll speak to in just about a second. We would like to pair this project with a battery energy storage component to it. We plan on the battery energy storage component to be off-site of the airport, so we would not be looking to site the containers within the airport. We are hoping that this would make the process of developing the project a little bit easier, as the solar side of airport development is a little bit more of a known quantity, where the FAA has more direct guidance for us, whereas with battery energy, it's a bit of an emerging technology. We're hoping to simplify the project by keeping the battery energy out of the airport area. Our biggest hurdle for this project, and to be fully transparent, is going to be the interconnection. National Grid operates a 115 kV line that is roughly a mile south of the airport. This is the only line, unfortunately, that is capable of accepting a project of this scale within this area. So without this line, I don't think there would be a viable project at all. Unfortunately, the main downside to this connection is it's going to require what's called a 3-breaker ring bus. As renewable energy has grown throughout the New York State, the transmission operators have begun to require greater and greater protection requirements for these projects. A 3-breaker ring bus simply refers to the substation that has to be built out to connect the renewable energy project. This is not a couple of poles, but actually would require about an acre and a half in order to safely connect the renewable energy project. It is a significant investment, which is one of the main reasons why the program is very eager to keep the project as large as it could be, so that it could be as financially viable as it could possibly be. The picture that you're seeing here is our initial early buildable area map, where we've done some desktop analysis on slope, wetlands, streams, and other sensitive areas. On our next slide here, this is our initial sketch plan that we've commissioned for the project. And you can see pretty much the exact way that we envisioned the layout of the PV component to be. Most of that solar would be split across 3 subarrays, one to the south of the airport, one to the east, and then one to the north. We've been in great communication with Shannon, and we feel that this is an area that does not have any potential future uses or conflicting uses at the airport, and could provide a nice additional revenue for the community and the county.
Harrison, I did just want to add, for those that are here and see the map, that the area to the north is not the airports. So that's a neighbor that has agreed to work with NYSERDA as well. And there would be a connection, though, under the runway.
Yes, thanks, Shannon.
Yep.
We are thinking about a horizontal boring, so there will be no impact to the runway at all. All the cablings would go underneath without any kind of impediments foreseeable to airport operations. Just to be fully transparent as well, no full agreement has been signed yet or agreed upon yet with these landowners, but in order to make sure that we understand that this is a viable project and a realistic one to do, we have engaged with them for their openness to consider this type of project, and they've been nothing but cooperative thus far. And to mention, as far as the interconnection goes, we would like to go down the street. I do forget what the street name here is, but the Cook Road. We would likely follow Cook Road down, continue to bore down all the way to this opposite connection over here. This is where we would like to be setting our interconnection. I don't know if you guys are able to see my cursor, but I hope so.
We are.
Okay, great. So that's kind of the project in a nutshell. What we've done so far is we have completed a New York independent system operator pre-application, which gives us an opportunity to present the project to the NYSO and National Grid and get an early feedback of whether a project is possible or not, which is how we've learned about the cost implications of the Three Baker Ring Bus. We've also completed a production cost interconnection study. This has been particularly helpful in demonstrating that the renewable energy generated at this part of the state really does provide a good value and a good justification for building a project here. There are other areas throughout the state where the cost of renewable energy generated is depressed due to various factors such as renewable energy congestion. And in this case, we found through our interconnection study that it's actually a very good location for solar generation. We've also conducted a fatal flaw analysis and code review. This goes into a number of different environmental factors, species evaluations, any other regulations and permit factors that would come into play. And so far, there has been nothing that has struck us as being too difficult. As Shannon mentioned, that landowners to the north are third-party landowners. We've started some third engagement with them. We've also engaged with the landowners to the south that we would require for a GenTie right-of-way. We've also initiated some Federal Aviation Authority consultation, discussing the potential project and what are some of the implicated requirements that the project would have to comply with. And it seems that because this particular airport does not have a traffic control tower, that we would have, at least compared to some of our other airports that we've looked at, a bit more of a smoother, streamlined process with the FAA. And lastly, we've commissioned a project sketch plan as shared just now. With that, I hope that I was able to demonstrate that there's a potential opportunity here that is worth exploring, that could mutually benefit both NYSERDA and the county. Moving forward, our ask is to get into a non-binding memorandum of understanding. This MOU would allow us to engage in these additional development steps at the cost of NYSERDA to verify that there is a potential project here. These would include other more advanced environmental studies, phase 1 ESA, possibly a CIA, wetland delineation, consultation, various engagement consultation with EPA, New York State DEC, and so forth. These are all the tasks that we would look to engage in moving forward. In terms of timeline, we were hoping to, one of the changes that the NYSO has made in the past year regarding large-scale renewable energy project is that they moved away from a rolling acceptance of interconnection applications. Now they are moving to an 18-month clustered study cycle process. This particular clustered cycle deadline is starting on July 2024. If we do miss that deadline, the next opportunity to make an interconnection application, it would be in about 18 months from that date. While we were really hopeful and optimistic that we could endeavor to reach that initial July date, I do want to be transparent that due to the additional complexities that we've identified, specifically regarding the fact that we need to come to an agreement with at least 3 other additional landowners to verify and fully demonstrate site control to the New York State independent operator, that we think it will be very difficult for us to meet that July 2024 date, but we would endeavor to meet the next cluster study interconnection application date, which would also give us more time to negotiate with the various landowners and plan the project accordingly as the FAA would require and any other stakeholders would require.
Harrison, could you just touch on the other airports that you may have done this at or are working at this moment?
Absolutely. We do have a couple of example projects here, so I'll just skip to that right now. One of the projects that our consultants have worked on, and I believe this has been fully constructed and operating, is in Sanford, Maine, the Sanford Seacoast Regional Airport. And similarly to the project we're working here, that particular project has sited its PV panels right around the runway, as you can see in the graphic depicted on the right. In addition to this particular one, I'm sorry, I don't have the other project. We've also worked on the Dulles Airport in Charlestown as well, and that's another one that our consultant rather has worked on. Build Ready ourselves, we have not constructed a project, but as you may know, we are working on a project in St. Lawrence County. It's a mine that is going to be our first RFP. Our second RFP is going to be in planning with Caswell landfill. It's in Tompkins County in the town of Dryden. That particular county has been very fruitful in providing potential sites for Build Ready to assess, and we've been working with them on the Tompkins County Ithaca International Airport. And that particular one is something that we're moving forward with a lot of excitement. It's very similar to Dunkirk in that we are looking to put our project area right adjacent to the runway. It will similarly have to make a bore, a horizontal bore to the interconnection. That project is going to be a lot smaller than this one. We're estimating that to be about 12.5 megawatts versus the 25 megawatt that we're looking at for Dunkirk Airport. I would also mention that project is most likely to be DG, where it taps onto a lower kV electrical network. Our current project right now that is what we consider a flagship is the Benson Mine project. It is 12.5 megawatts in St. Lawrence County. It's sited on an iron ore tailings pile. And so really has minimal environmental impact. It's on land that has already been depleted and used. And we expect this to be a really good project that is community supported. One of the historical aspects of this project is that it is actually located within the Adirondack Park. And so it's a nice feather that NYSERDA was able to get this project permitted over there with all the stakeholder support. As I mentioned, the other project that is second on our queue for development is the Caswell project in Tompkins County. Similarly, it's a 12.5 megawatt project on a landfill cat with a 2.5 megawatt battery energy component system that is planning to tie up to one of the substations up on Pearl River Road on this graphic depicted over here. And that's it from us. My director could not join us today, but I do have his contact here. If you have any questions that I am unable to answer for you guys, I'd be more than happy to connect you guys to him. There's my information as well. Any kind of questions that you have or concerns about this particular project, definitely send our way.
Harrison, I know this is just for the MOU, but just maybe for the legislators, you can describe the process of the future lease that would take place and what would happen in the end with the panels.
Absolutely. So our lease terms typically describe a 20-year lease with 3 5-year extensions, so you could consider it a 35-year lease. Our leases will include a decommissioning clause. So we will specify in there that the site has to be restored to existing or better condition prior to our development of the site. And in addition, it is a bonded security, so that we will endeavor to make sure that there's always going to be funding in place to make sure that this is something that can happen.
Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation, Harrison and Shannon. Appreciate that. Are you to the point, or are we to the point of having information on revenue from such a project? Estimated.
That's a great question. Fortunately, we are not at that position yet. However, what we can say is that Build Ready as a state entity, we are committed to paying at least market rate, if not a little bit higher, for these types of projects, and would come with a real estate appraisal to determine what those values would be. Naturally, I would like to quote some of our other projects' values, but since they've largely been on landfills and mine areas, I don't know that the lease values necessarily correlate with what's being offered here. But just to give you an idea of what has been paid for some of the landfill and mine type projects, we've looked at about $1,000 to about 18. $2,000 per acre with a 2% escalator rate.
And just to follow up with that, we're required to get fair market value at airports, so we can't go lower than that. In one of our easement projects that we did, I think it was 2 years ago, we had the appraisal done, and we were between $18,000 and $2,000 an acre at the airports. So he's kind of right in the ballpark. I mean, with the way the market is now, it could be more than that. But
So I was keying in on the megawatt number, so I totally blanked on how many acres we're talking here then.
what's the total project? 40 acres on one area and 20 or 30 on the other?
I believe so. The exact amount that we are looking at on the airport itself eludes me at the moment. I believe that it's about 70 to 80 acres total on the airport itself, and we're looking at about 100 acres, 110 total for the entire project.
Okay, 70 to 80 acres of Chautauqua counties.
Just
Correct.
airport.
Okay,
Just airport. The other are adjacent neighbors and whatnot. That's a totally separate project. I mean, it's similar project,
Right.
but just separate.
okay.
That would be yearly revenue then?
And annually, Harrison?
Correct, annually.
Okay, all right. All right, I don't mean to hog questions, comments, concerns for Shannon or Harrison.
I would also like to add that there will be options payment as well. It's at least option payment.
This might seem like a dumb question, but are there any safety concerns with an airport?
Yeah, there's lots. A solar glare is required, which will be done as part of the project. But we have already put it through to the FAA, and they have given a Part 163 concurrence, which basically puts it back on us. They've given up the option of saying yes or no. So that's kind of what they're doing at airports now with these type of projects. They put it back on the owner to decide if it's viable for the airports. But as far as safety for glare, these are on, and I'm gonna let Harrison talk a little bit further on that. But they're movable, correct? So we can go towards the direction of the sun. And is this am I?
They can be on tracking arrays, so that
Yeah.
is certainly a potential option for a project here.
Whatever comes back with the solar.
I think
glare.
I agree with you on Sharon that with the FAA they have changed their guidelines a little bit, and whenever there's an airport where there is no air, the primary FAA consideration or concern for solar glare is on the airport traffic control tower. What they found over the past several years is that the amount of impact for glare to pilots is not too dissimilar from water bodies or other naturally occurring glare factors. So their main concern is for air traffic control tower, which is why this project is a little bit easier, more acceptable, I think, from the FAA perspective. Nonetheless, our design process does include a glare study. So as we do these types of designs, part of the process is to run a glare analysis and make sure that there's no harmful glare that could be caused to buildings or any other receptive entities. And going a little bit step further, we also do a viewshed analysis for any of our solar projects in general, so that any kind of visibility concerns that may exist within the community is something we're prepared to talk about and address.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I guess my last one, the proposal is simply to conduct or authorize the memorandum of understanding for the feasibility assessment. Once we have the feasibility assessment in hand, we would have all of the nuts and bolts, concrete information, thank you, Dalton, that we would need to move forward and would be voting at that point as well. Is that correct?
That's correct. We
Okay.
would have to vote on the lease
Okay.
at that time.
Okay.
NYSERDA covers the cost of the feasibility assessment.
Yes, nothing on the airports.
And do you need to have the feasibility assessment done by that July date, or just have that process started by that date?
It's unfortunately gotten very strict, that July date, caused us a lot of heartburn actually. So yes, we do need to have a number of feasibility done, and that's probably not going to be as much of an issue. I think the biggest challenge is going to be that the NYSERDA rules require us to demonstrate site control through a formal lease option agreement with all involved landowners and the right-of-way landowners. This is a difference from the past, where in the past we could have actually just moved forward with an MOU with all of those entities. And starting this year, because they have clarified that they require a lease, we think that just the amount of inertia that might occur between us starting now and engaging all these landowners to come to an agreement, that we probably won't have everything ready by that July date. But we will certainly endeavor to try and get it going.
All right, thank you. Anything else? Questions, comments? Shannon, anything else that you would like to relay to us?
No,
Okay,
I think Harrison covered it all. If you have any questions for me, feel free to ask.
all right. Go ahead, Tom.
No, I'm good.
Oh, you look like you're on the edge of your seat. All right.
Because it's 5:30.
Right. There's that.
Yeah, right. Bob.
So, all this MOU, everything, but if we don't hit this July deadline and we're going 18 months from now, when are we realistically sitting down to talk about numbers as far as the lease goes? Are we 2 years out, 3 years out?
I think we'll continue to progress on this path and try to get to that point sooner than later. If we have a viable project here, I would think that there isn't a reason not to offer and to start discussing a lease option agreement. And as I mentioned, even though we don't think that it'll be realistic for us to reach that July date, we'll certainly take all efforts to try. And just if we miss it, we'll just be much better prepared for the next set of dates.
So what would the
Which
sooner be? You said sooner or later?
The sooner would be July of this year. The later would be 18 months from now, or from to the July date when the next
We'll
application.
be discussing leases July of this year.
I would think that we would want the lease done and squared away with hopefully before July, if we're able to get everything that we want done, but certainly well before the 18-month afterwards.
If the project is feasible. If it's not, then we don't. Oh, sorry.
Okay, anything else?
This question is, was the Jamestown Airport ever considered?
It was considered.
Okay.
The grid is too full,
Oh,
is what the determination came from. We didn't even make it to this
Okay.
this phase in the game.
mhm.
And maybe Harrison, you want to touch on that a little bit more? Or?
Yeah, there is. So we've looked at that location with a lot of intent. We thought it was a great site at first. There is a 34.5 kV line, which is a lot cheaper to connect to than the line over here. So from that perspective, it looked okay. Unfortunately, the substation and the lines in that area, I think, are very oversubscribed and at capacity. And what we've been told from the utility is that there's going to be an exorbitant amount of reconductoring required to put on a project of a significant scale at that site, which is why we stepped off of moving forward with that one and put our focus to this one.
Okay, thank you. Committee, it is back to us. Anything else? Those in favor of authorizing the memorandum of understanding for the feasibility assessment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed and carried. Shannon, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Harrison, thank you very much.
Thank you, Harrison. We'll be in touch.
Thank you very much.
And for the good of the order, is there anything else that we have missed? Seeing nothing, we're going to.
Oh, Chris.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Someone in this room is having a birthday, and so you can all wish
Ooh.
her a very
Happy
Happy
birthday.
birthday for the record, yes, yes.
Bon anniversaire à toi.
Well, my grandchildren serenaded me this morning, so
I was going
It
to
was all downhill from there.
yeah, we're not doing that.
If we adjourn, maybe we can sing, but
could
we
sing,
can't
hold
sing.
it.
right now.
I'm not singing on the microphone.
Speaking of the adjournment, let's take a motion for that.
I'll make that motion.
And a second. Thank you, gentlemen. We are adjourned.